Allendafoss. Not impressive, but tall. You can imagine that for the water it's quite a ride. Viewfinder, there's no rainbow, but in actual there's a rainbow that starts right at the bottom of this plume and arches up to the upper left. What would you like to be underneath that fall? Might just break your back. Perhaps according to the amount of water literally coming over at each point on that fall. And now we're on the opposite side of the fall. About a day ahead, so I got an extra day, and it's actually more than that, but the last day's to throw away the way they rig it. So I came down from Seljalandsfoss Falls down to the dock, and just to look at the island of Heimaey, or Heimaey, however you pronounce it, from here. You can actually go out there. I assume you can stay the night because only one boat goes per day. And that's assuming it's not today, which is a maintenance day. Before the sun sets, I thought I'd get one last pan. A small shed made in 1948 by the farmer who lived nearby, out of stones off that cliffside up there, and then turf. And its purpose was severalfold. One, it protected milk cans because you never knew for sure when the milkman was going to come. So there was always this little shed to put them in where they wouldn't freeze or in the summer get too hot. Also a great place for kids waiting for the school bus and for other people who needed to get out of the elements. It's been restored, as you can see from those new timbers, but it's interesting how everybody adapts. For the traveler, the interesting thing is the different ways people do that. Back around the Second World War, one of our planes crash-landed on a beach here. I think all of the men died, unfortunately, but it's there as a memento of the past, and seems a worthy thing to go take a look at. I'm sure long ago anything that could be used was cannibalized from it. To look at the wires, the harness of wires that's there after they've gutted the electronics that could be used. To see the whole front end missing. And this hints at what carnage might have taken place on the landing. Those of little self-worth who need to somehow tell the world they've been here desecrate these kind of monuments. What are these holes the consequence of? Did people literally shoot at it? Imagine the person, maybe a woman, who installed these, hoping that the men would be safe, that somehow her effort would be the critical part to keep them safe. And she put this cable on, the cable I'm holding, she held. So this chunk of metal has been sheared away, folded back from the force of the landing. What happened to the tail section? Was the entire thing cannibalized as useful? Looking up through the tail section, of course. And here we enter through the cargo door. And we stand where people sat. How many were on this plane? I'll have to see. The view out through the cockpit. What did they think as they were landing? God, one can only imagine. Fear, the hope, trying to stay steady, calm. Perhaps a quarter of a mile away I encounter my first scrap of metal, but it's so small and relatively lightweight it could easily have been blown here anytime since this plane landed. Just to give some context, if we take the alignment of the front and back planes today, this was the approach. Specifically, that was exactly the approach, if the plane's orientation today reflects the past. See from here, looking towards the plane, it looks like a pretty flat little plateau up here, maybe giving him what he felt was far more safety than trying to land on that narrow beach, particularly if he did not have much in the way of control. But imagine you're a couple hundred feet in the air and you're trying to land right here. What are you thinking? Thank God you can't know your future. There's irony here. In the past, when fishing was big, fishermen and their boats from France and England would come, great numbers of them, far too great, would be shipwrecked on Iceland's treacherous coasts. This to the local folks, which means the ranchers that we see here, or their equivalent a couple hundred years ago, to them it was a godsend. Because on board that ship were casks of wine, various kinds of liquors, huge baskets full of biscuits which they prized, and other important supplies, not to mention the entire ship itself. Finished wood, hard quality wood, birch, other woods that just simply were not here. Furniture that had already been made. This was the bonanza of a shipwrecked boat. Could this somehow, if we could go back and look at what happened to the wings, the engines, the seats, that perhaps somewhere in these homes, these ranches up here, in their outbuildings or in their homes, there would be scraps of that plane that were used. I'm sure it has not escaped your notice that this large, black, somewhat flat, desert-like landscape is, in fact, the outwash of glacial volcanic size of that cliff, 60, 80 feet, and who knows how much deeper it is than that.
And yet this tiny flower grows.